record on the computer. So to echo, thank you so much, Nicole, for that introduction, and thank you everybody for being here. And you know, it's really commendable that you would take the time out of your day to come and learn about how you can upskill yourselves, and just to take time to learn about something that maybe doesn't have to do with your day-to-day roles or your curriculum if you're still in university. And so thank you for giving me your time. I hope that the next 50 or so minutes are, you walk out of here feeling like you learned something, like you gain value, like you can take what you learn and apply it. I'm going to explain a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today and everything. But first, Maya, who's also with us from Cosmic Centaurs, she'll be kind of helping me share some links with you all. We want to do our first personal branding exercise. So in the chat box, she's going to share a link to a website called Get Emoji. And I would love it if you guys could go and change and add an emoji to your name here on Zoom. So when you open the website on your computer, you can search for whichever emoji you think best represents you. I actually always like to choose the palm tree because Tala, for those of you who know, means Nakhazida. And so it just kind of makes sense. Feels like it's my personal brand. That was my name. And if you go to participants and you click on your name and you hover over it, you'll see more. When you click on more, you can rename yourself. And so go ahead and copy and paste that emoji into your name, and you can go ahead and rename yourself. And it would be great to see what emoji you select for yourself. I love to get a sense of, you know, what's the emoji that represents you. It's kind of a fun little prelude into personal branding. So I've gone and added mine. Hopefully you guys can see my screen, and then that's how it works. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. We're here to help. It's just a fun little exercise. If it doesn't work out, no issues. But we thought it might be a nice way to get a sense of, you know, what emoji you think represents you, and then a little bit about yourself. So I've selected the palm tree. Maya, let's see which one. You haven't put one yet, but usually Maya has an even bigger smile on her face than I do. So maybe she'll pick something like that. Bayan. Oh, I love it. You picked a whale and a swan. So cute. Thank you. I'm so glad that it worked. Maya, per usual, her smiling self. Let's see, we have a note in the chat. Done. Awesome. Great. Bayan, do you want to share why you selected those two emojis? We'd love to hear a little bit about why.
Hello everyone, good evening. Yes, I select these emojis because I really like these sea creatures and all about sea. I love sea.
Nice.
The water and something like that.
That's awesome.
Yes. And also I like this swan because it represents something about fairy tales.
Yeah, that is really nice. I really like that. Thanks for sharing. I also see we have Dimitri, who's added an emoji to his name. Dimitri, would love to hear from you why you put the guy behind the laptop. Of course, if you're open to sharing, no pressure. If not, it's all okay. We want you guys to feel as comfortable as possible when you engage. It's all good. Cool. So I'm going to keep us moving for the interest of time, but of course we can always come back to it. And at the end, we can see, you know, all the different emojis that everybody has added. For those of you who are just joining us, it's a fun little exercise that we're adding to our names because today's session is about personal branding. And it appears in many ways. And one of the ways is to kind of see which emoji you would use to represent yourself. So Jana has a turtle. I think, I don't know if it's Ala or Ala, but you have a cup of coffee. Nicole has a lady with her hand up. That's really nice. So, oh, we have a panda. Lara, I love the panda, and a butterfly. This is great. This is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we'll come back to you guys for a collection of our emojis for sure. Let's dive into the meat of what we have today. And before I do that, I just want to share that there are a few guidelines. The first is I am super enthusiastic and energetic. Please let me know if you want to ask a question it's whatever you guys need. Just drop it in the chat. Maya is also here to kind of help and see. I'll ask that, you know, you take yourselves, you keep it yourselves on mute when you're not speaking. But when I ask you to contribute, please, like you know, we always say, I can hear the sound of my voice forever, but I would love it if this was more of a discussion. I'll watch the time and Maya will help me make sure that I kind of keep track, but we ask that you stay fully present. If you want to turn your video on, you're welcome to, no pressure. It's just sometimes nice to kind of see if someone has something to say or to see if you agree or disagree. And lastly, I would just love if you can kind of enter this session with an open mind. You know, already it's really commendable that you're all here, you know, at the end of your day, coming to learn. And I'm so grateful that you're sharing the space with me. So please feel free to ask as many questions, you know, even if you want to, you know, play devil's advocate and ask about something else, you know, we love that. That's what we want. We want to hear from you. So today I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro on the topic. We're going to talk about actually what it means to create your personal brand. Then we'll do a session on networking, and then we'll have time for a discussion and Q&A. So I'm going to try and kind of speed up through so I can give as much time for everybody to ask as many questions as possible. And even while I'm presenting, if there's a question you want to put in the chat, or if you want to kind of take yourself on mute, that's fine. Ask it during. It's completely okay. We love that. So maybe I'll tell you who I am and why I'm here today. My name is Tala Audeh. I working at Cosmic Centaurs for the past year and a half as a consultant, but my background is actually in marketing and communications. So I studied at the American University in Washington, DC. I studied public communication and marketing, and then I worked at Ogilvy. For those of you who may not know, Ogilvy is one of the global creative agencies. I worked in public relations and strategy and planning for a few years. It was amazing. I got to work with super cool brands and meet amazing people. But then ultimately, I decided I want to go back to school. I went to Columbia and I got my master's there in strategic communication. And I love that program. It was fascinating. I learned a lot about what I'm going to be sharing with you today. Then I worked at A'mar, which is the company that built the Burj Khalifa, for those of you who aren't familiar. I worked in their brand and corporate communications department, and that was really interesting. And finally, here I am, been at Cosmic for a year and a half, and really enjoying working with our clients. And the way that we, you know, create value is we say that we build happier and more flexible workplaces. And so that means a lot of things for a lot of different people. But we really love collaboration. We love helping teams become more innovative. We love, you know, hypothesizing about the future of work. And part of that is really putting ourselves out there. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But we work with leaders, we work with different teams, we work at the level making change. Like, you know, it's a really cool job, and we learn a lot along the way. But you know, one of the core things we do is we build our brand. And today I'm going to be talking to you about building your personal brand. And I'll explain the metaphor of Mr. Potato Head in a minute. But I want to, you know, start here and ask you guys, can anybody guess what this means? I just go ahead, give me your wild guesses. 98%. We have a data point behind it, but you know, you can take yourselves off mute or put your guesses in the chat. But I would love to kind of hear, like, what do you think this kind of means? What do you think this number represents?
Maybe it represents the percentage of water
It's a really
in the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah,
that's the first thing that I came to my mind when I see it.
No, that's so interesting. And actually, I'd be really curious to hear if that's close. That's not what it is. I'll give you a hint. It's within the context of the world of work. Let me say that. But good guess, Bayan. Thanks for that. We have some in the chat. 98% of people do not know what creating their own brand means. That's a good one. That's a really good guess, Dimitri. Thank you. 98% of your dreams will come true if you believe in yourself. I love that. That's so beautiful, Isra. Thank you for sharing. That's really, really nice. Awesome. So these are really great guesses, and some of them are closer than others, but 98% is the number of recruiters that do background research on prospective candidates online. And I'm sharing that number with you because some of you might be in this program and might, you know, seek employment later on. Some of you might be entrepreneurs and looking to build your own businesses. Some of you might be students and you want to get a job. But no matter what your background is, and no matter what your journey takes you on, it's really important to remember that, you know, when growing your career, the online universe is a place to put a name for yourself. And it's never been more important to establish your own personal brand. And, you know, we want to know what makes Ghalib Ghalib. We want to know what makes Abdul Nasser so special in his line of work. We want to understand why Nicole's an expert within what she does. And we want to communicate that. And I want to help you guys, give you some tools, give you some frameworks, give you ideas on how you can do this no matter where you are. So the idea is not that this is just for people who are looking for a job or just for people who are looking to grow. It's for everybody. We can all benefit from growing our personal brand, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. Even if you're an entrepreneur, having a personal brand is amazing. I think a lot of people, we all know Steve Jobs. We all know a lot of these really notable entrepreneurs, and we know them for a reason, because they have a brand for themselves. And even if you decide to go back into the world of work and you want to get a job, talent professionals are going to continue looking for you online, and you want to be there. You want to be where they're looking for you, because you want to make sure that whatever you're putting out there helps you achieve your goals, whatever they are. And so we're going to be talking today about a personal brand, but I want to take a moment to define the difference. Your personal brand is the way in which people perceive you. It's the impression of an individual based on your experience or your expertise. So, if you refer to somebody as maybe the crazy cat lady, that's her personal brand. I can say that because I have 2 cats. But really, that's what we want to be. What we want to be building for ourselves. And personal branding is the effort behind that. So you can do personal branding for yourself, but you can also do it for somebody else. And so this is really the action behind building a personal brand. And I wanted to make that difference, because whether you do it for yourself, which we highly encourage, or if maybe you have a marketing job and part of your job is to, manage the brand of the CEO, you're engaging in personal branding. And it's important to understand what tools and tricks you have to further your own career, no matter what that looks like. We have examples of this. A personal brand doesn't have to be huge. You don't have to be Steve Jobs. You don't have to be the biggest person. You can be somebody who has a perspective on something. We took this example of Ziad Abishakir, who's an environmental engineer. He has around 8,000 followers. This is what you call a micro-influencer. But, it's specific. He has an area of expertise, and that's what he's creating content about, and that's what he's positioning himself as. So Nal is actually a career coach that we work with often, and she has an amazing personal brand on LinkedIn. It's all about helping people get a job. So actually, if you are looking for career tips and how to kind of land that role, I highly recommend you check out her content. It's all free on LinkedIn, but that's her personal brand. She was a recruiter and now she's a coach, and she helps you find a job. Come on, we have Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't love him, but his personal brand is magnetic. People follow him like religiously. They love him, and it's really interesting because he built a company, but he also built a name for himself, and his own name is bigger than his company name. You can hire him to be a speaker. So it's really interesting to see that building a personal brand isn't just big. It's not just about being the biggest and screaming about it. It's also about building something that's niche and specific. And I'll explain that in a little bit. So how can personal branding help you get a job, or help you create a network? And that's what we want to talk about today. So we're going to discuss 4 steps, and we wanted to make it tangible. We'll share this presentation with you, of course. We want to walk you through something that's simple for you to follow, that you can use the resources that we share to do whatever it is that you need to do. So the first is to define your value add. What makes you special? Why am I going to hire Fadi? Why is Maya, what does Maya bring to the table? And then you want to think of, all right, how am I going to differentiate myself? How am I going to explain to people that actually, I work in marketing, but so many other people do. So how do I stand out? And then it's about growing your network, and it's about, leveraging and seeing who you have. And again, whether you are doing this because you want to get a job, or whether you're doing it because you want to grow your company, no matter what, it's important, and the last is how you get seen. So I'm going to cover all of these 4 steps, but I know that a lot of you saw that on the front page, we were talking about how we're going to learn this from Mr. Potato Head. But I wanted to explain who Mr. Potato Head actually was, because I don't know. Does anybody here know who he is? Are you guys familiar with Toy Story, the movie? Yeah, oh, good. He is this character, and he's interesting for us today because, as you'll see here, I'll put it on. As you'll see here, Mr. Potato has many different pieces to him, right? He has different pieces. You're not familiar. That's okay, Dimitri. He has many pieces. As you can see, he's a toy, and he lives in a toy world, and he has a nose, and he has eyes, and everything lives in the back here. This is his wife. He can change his hat. he can change his ears, he can change his mouth, and whatever the pieces he puts on, he projects. So if we look at this video again, we can see that here, Mr. Potato Head is, he looks kind of silly. Everything is disfigured at one point, but you can also have it be the right way. See, he has his mustache, he has his hat. And the reason why that's representative of a personal brand will become clear, but I just wanted to make sure that you have this context before I dive into this explanation. So that's a little bit about our main character for this webinar. But we're going to start with defining our value add. And Abdul Nasser says, know him very well. Fantastic. I'm super happy. And your personal brand really just starts with you. It's personal. It's your character, it's your strengths, and it's the value you create. And so if you're looking at Mr. Potato Head, it's the core. It's the potato. It's the part of him that's ever changing. And here's how you can figure out what that is. Because I think defining your value add, you can say I'm this or I'm that, but I want to give you some tangible ways to do that. So the first thing is to reflect, and the second is to ask for help. So let's start with the reflection piece, maybe a little bit of an exercise. So ask yourself, what are the aspects of my story that shape who I am today? What's your journey been? What is it about you? For example, I'll give you, this is me, I'm social by nature. I grew up, I think, talking to everybody. I always played on a team sport. Like I played football my whole life, very competitively. And I actually also started my school's first recycling club when I was 10. I'm really passionate about sustainability. I care so much for the environment, and it's something that's part of me. And I really value optimism, hard work, and curiosity. That's part of my story as Tala. And then you think about, great, what is the job that I would like to be doing? I know that because I grew up playing team sports, I always want to work with teams. That's why I love my job today. I always want to be learning. I'm very curious. And if you ask my husband, he'll tell you I don't stop asking questions because I'm just curious. I want to learn. I learned in my career that I prefer to consult rather than be the client. So in my career, I've been the consultant helping brands build, but what I didn't enjoy being the brand and having consultants around me because I didn't feel like I had enough creativity. And I also always know that I love to work in a job where we create knowledge. I didn't want to just, do work and go home. I wanted to create something and I wanted to share that. We write blog posts, we write articles, we develop frameworks. I love that. And lastly, ask yourself, what credentials or experience do you have? And mind you, it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Like I always say in my essay for university, I talked about my first job ever, and it was selling chocolate lemonade. And it was disgusting, of course. I mean, it's gross by nature. But, my mom encouraged me to be entrepreneurial. She's like, that was your first job. You went out and you sold chocolate lemonade and everybody was disgusted, but you did it. And so your experience doesn't just have to be, I worked here or I did that. You can think about the impact you've created on a small scale and talk about it, because sometimes your credentials and experience aren't always just about what you've done or what you've achieved, but they tell you a little bit more about the kind of person you are. So that's something to keep in mind as you reflect on your value add. But one thing that I always like to do is ask for help. We always say the best person to write a letter of recommendation for you is usually one of your parents or somebody really close to you, maybe an aunt. We go and we ask them, like, what stories do you have about me that tell you about who I am? I'm sure if I went and I asked Maya's parents, or her best friend to tell me about Maya or to tell me about a time when she did something that was so reflective of her personality, they would have dozens to share. So I encourage you to also ask for the same. Also ask people what they would compliment about you. I think you would be really surprised to find that the people around you see you in a different way than you see yourself. And that will help you determine what your strengths are. You might not think that you're a very good listener, but someone in your network might tell you. And if you're studying psychology, then that's an incredible skill to have. And you want to make sure that you have that and you communicate that. And lastly, ask them to introduce you. I think we all, it's humbling, to hear the way that somebody would introduce you, but you also hear what they say first. I say, I'm Tala, I'm a wife, I'm this and I'm that, but that might not be the way that my brother introduces me. For him, I'm his big sister, and that would look completely different. So it's not to say that you have to do the reflection exercises by yourself. It's okay to ask for help from your friends, professors, teachers, from people around you who know you well, from people you've worked with. because it helps you think of yourself from the outside looking in. The next piece is to differentiate yourself. And this is all about telling your story. So once you've identified your story, what you're going to communicate about yourself, now it's saying, okay, how am I going to put myself out there? How am I going to tell the world why Hiba is so incredible? You know, how am I as Abdul Nasser gonna position myself in the online sphere to make myself the most appealing for a company to hire me? And here's how we recommend doing that. Think about your skill set. So defining your value add is difficult, but you can select from a few skill sets you can even Google it. Skill sets employers look for, or the best skill sets to have at work. And it's interesting, you'll find a long list, but if we just take 1 minute to think about what are some of the skills that you see on this slide that align with you, and I'd love to hear why. So maybe if somebody wants to go and pick one of these and tell us why they think that, I would love to hear from you guys.
Hi Tala, how are you?
Hi.
How's everyone?
Yeah, great.
So personally, I think I would choose problem solver.
Great.
Like I have this passion for solving problems and coming up with solutions because it highlights my creativity.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically.
Thank you for sharing, Jana. That's awesome. Absolutely. Problem solving is one of the things that, even as kids we do when we can't figure out how to fit a toy into something else. It's something that we learn and pick up. So that's a really important one, and I'm sure it'll take you really far. Anybody else would want to share from one of these skills?
Yes, I think for myself, creative thinker.
Yeah.
Because I manage a lot of things with my creativity. I think it's a wide term to talk about, but I think it's creative thinker.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much. Absolutely. Thinking creatively and thinking outside the box, even in a role where you would think it's not necessary, like finance, it's so important. You can come up with so many different things.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
To show or to solve the things in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Bayan. That's really beautiful. We have a few comments in the chat, which I'd like to share. We have Isra who says, detail oriented. I always look for perfection. And can I just tell you, that is so important. Meticulous attention to detail will go very far. And so I commend you for that one. That's a really good one. And Dimitri also says the same. He says, I'm detail oriented because when I take a liking to something, I take care of it to a microscopic level. And that is so important. I think those two things in your work will really stand out, because I can't tell you how many times, and I mean, I think I have decent detail orientation, like I'm not the most, but just being able to catch things and to pick them apart to perfection, it's a really good skill. So thank you all for sharing. I'm really pleased with that. The next is to think about your personal brand statement. So when you have an idea of your skills and you have an idea about your story, it's time to put it together in a statement that helps you make that summary very clear, and it allows you to have that profile piece on LinkedIn or at the top of your resume. And it's important because it's the first glimpse into you telling your own story through a few sentences. So what we're going to do here is I have a good personal brand statement is something that, clearly reflects you. It shows you in your full and complete self. But on the contrary, a bad personal brand statement can make it not, you're not putting your best foot forward. So again, Mr. Potato Head comes in handy, because here we see when he's put together, it's clear who he is and what he looks like. But when he's not, he's a completely distorted version of himself. And so when crafting these statements, I want you to think of what paints the picture of you as you are today. And so for this, we're actually going to launch a little bit of an exercise. So we have a few examples of personal statements that we've put together, and I want you guys to have a read of them, and I'm going to launch a Zoom poll where you can vote on the one that you think is the strongest. So these are all personal brand statements we wrote as students. So the first one says, I am a writer and editor. I work with nonprofits and brands that do good, helping them with storytelling. I'm looking to secure a full-time position writing copy in an agency or at an organization. The second one says, a conversion copywriter for socially conscious game changers, background writing copy for mixed media, and keen to work with organizations or agencies building a better tomorrow. Last one says, recent AUS English literature graduate, eager to tell stories of impact-driven brands. I help businesses that do good, do better through the power of words. When I'm not writing for the AUS Foundation blog, I tutor English to underprivileged. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. It's just going to say which one would you choose, A, B, or C. And hopefully, if my Zoom is working, hello. Seems I'm having technical difficulties. It's okay. Maybe we can get some people to contribute, or you can write it in the chat. I would love to hear which one you guys think is the best one, A, B, or C. Okay, Hiba votes for B, Lada votes for B, Adi votes for B. Maya doesn't actually know the answer to this, so Maya, I want to hear your vote too. We have a lot for B and C, no A's so far. Great. Awesome. A lot of C's. Great. So B, it is like that story is taken from Oxford Dictionary. Thank you so much, Dimitri. I wrote these myself. I'm very honored that you think that. Thank you so much. Hussam says C. Awesome. So really interesting. If anybody has any last minute votes, I'm happy to share the answer with you. The correct answer to this question is in fact C. Oops. Because, and I'll explain why. With C, what you have is a very clear picture of where the person is also at in their life. So why does C work? B is very good. B is super clear, and B is beautifully written, and that represents a copywriter. And I think that that's really important. But C is really good because it actually paints the picture of where you are in life. You're a recent AUS graduate. That allows somebody to understand at what phase you're in. And you're telling them that you're eager, and you're specifying that you want to work with impact-driven brands. You're also saying that you help businesses that do good, do better through the power of words. That's really clear because that sentence is sharp and succinct. And when you're not writing for your blog, you're tutoring English. So this takes it one step further. You're telling me about you as a person. So, outside of work, when you're not writing for impact for nonprofits, you're also doing more. And so the reason why C works is because it gives me a full picture of who you are. B is still really good. It's not that it's bad. A is the weakest one, but B is good. But C gives me the full picture. So I get to understand more about you. And if I'm thinking about it, companies, they hire not just based on skill sets, but also for the people. And with C, I understand more about the person that you are. And that's why that option is stronger. So I'm happy that I caught you by surprise, Dimitri. That means that, that hopefully you'll walk out here with some food for thought. So all this is to say is that when you are differentiating yourself beyond your personal statement, you do have quite a few tools. Mr. Potato Head has everything that he has already inside of him, right? That's where he stores it all. And so do you. But there's a number of things that you can do on the outside, depending on the tools that you have, that will help you paint a picture for yourself. So the first is your resume. Now, with your CV, I always say that, I look for CVs that look different, because what does that tell me? That person went above and beyond to present themselves in such a way that made them stand out. I've seen a lot of CVs that are just a Word document, and that's great. And they're clear and they have all the information. But let's say this one for Leia, it looks different. It caught my eye. I want to read it. And a pro tip actually on Canva, which is a free tool, you have a bunch of CV templates that you can use. And so I want to suggest that to you, and we'll send you the presentation. You can kind of learn more about it. Another thing to have is an infographic resume. Now, I actually had one of these in university, but I think it's really helpful because an infographic resume doesn't just talk about your employment history, but you can present yourself in the data. So let's say you let's say, you know, you were volunteering one summer, or maybe you were taking a course and you scored really high. You could visualize data about yourself in interesting ways. And I think that that will make you stand out, especially if you have, you know, a few years of experience and you can talk about the impact you've created. Some people, especially if you're working in the design field, you know, you have a portfolio. I actually had a writing portfolio because in my first job, it was predominantly focused on writing, but you can have a portfolio for whatever it is. You can include projects from university. You can include samples of your past work if your employer allows for it. You can include even things that are in your hobbies, you know. My stepmom does a lot of pottery. It's part of her portfolio, you know, it comes with her whole package. Like, she comes to work and she has the stains of the clay on her, and that's part of who she is, and they love it because it suits the industry, you know, she's an interior designer. And lastly, references. You can actually even beautify your references because, you know, nothing says more about you than when somebody gives you a commendable reference. It can be on LinkedIn, you can ask them to write it, but again, you know, I've had references from professors, from past colleagues, and a lot of times they'll write it for you if you ask. And, you know, if someone asks me for a reference, I actually always ask them to start writing it first, because I have an idea of who they are. But I also understand that if you need the reference, it's because you have a certain thing that you want to put forward. And so there's nothing wrong with helping whoever's writing you a reference, make sure it's super sharp and crisp. And like I said, Canva is a powerful tool. It has templates for all of these things. You don't have to start from a blank page. It's free. You can go on, create an account, and search resume or search references. All of these templates, except for the portfolio, are from there. And they're already, like, you can just edit the information. So it's there for whenever you need it. And it goes a long way. You know, it tells somebody something about you. And if you do work in design or anything, it's an even better step forward. And I will say, even if you work in something which is the opposite of design, so maybe, I don't know, maybe you work in IT, or maybe you're a systems engineer, it's great. You stand out. You don't look like everybody else who has another resume. Your resume pops, and that's really cool. You also, when it comes to developing your tools, it's not just about having them, but it's also about engaging meaningfully. So the first thing I want to kind of commend you guys to think about is audit and select your channels. So, okay, you have your resume, you have your infographic resume, you have whatever you need, but how is your presence online? If I Google your name, what do I find? And depending on the role, you might have different set of expertise. Let's say you're a teacher. Actually, there's a lot of teachers who create content on YouTube, and it's really beautiful because what you can do is you can see here that, you know, you can get an understanding of their teaching style. Hello, the teacher doesn't have to teach me basic math on YouTube, but it's a value add. It's something that's helpful. If you are an interior designer, Instagram or Pinterest is great because I can get a sample of what your style is. If you're a biochemical engineer, maybe you write articles on LinkedIn, or maybe you comment on research. That's really interesting too. If you work in gaming, if you work in the gaming industry, Twitter and Twitch are huge. So select your channels and look at your own presence and think about it deliberately and say, what is the content and what do I want to put out there? I would also say that you should commit to a schedule and be consistent, because if you want to get your name out there, if you want to have a voice, if you want to have a point of view in the industry, you have to be consistent. All of these social media channels reward you for consistency. So commit to a schedule. Tell yourself, on Mondays, I post a video, and on Tuesdays, I post images. Or on Wednesdays, I go and I comment on 2 other LinkedIn posts because I want to grow my visibility. I either want to grow it for myself or because I want recruiters to see me. You just have to commit to that schedule and be consistent. And lastly, publish content that makes you look different. If you start following some people in the space, like let's say you're a consultant and you follow, you know, a senior consultant, great. Look at what they're posting and think about, how am I going to do that, but with my touch? So Bridget Hyacinth is somebody who has crazy amount of followers on LinkedIn, but what she does is she creates content that's different. She asks you questions, she creates polls, you know, she creates quotes. She stands out, you know, and she was one of the first people that did that. Right now, it's a lot more common, but she did it when it wasn't popular, and that's what makes her stand out, and that's what helped her grow her following. And I mean, you're talking about 6,000 comments on a quote. That's wild. That's a lot of people. I'm not saying that, you know, it's easy to get there. It takes a lot of hard work, but it's really important to think about, what's your channel? What's my presence? What's my schedule? You know, how often am I going to post? And what am I going to post that's going to make me look different while still being relevant to the area in which I'm operating in? And the last part is about growing your network. And this is where it's really about putting yourself out there. So the first thing you can do is like, go ahead and add people on LinkedIn and reach out. Some people have reached out to me on LinkedIn just for an informational interview. And I love to give them because I'm like, yeah, you want to hear about, you want to hear about marketing? Fantastic. I'll tell you about it. And don't, feel afraid to kind of search people in your field and connect with them. Also, just so that you know, a lot of recruiters and a lot of people who work in HR are super happy to have many connections because part of their job is to hire good talent. I also encourage you to attend events or webinars. Mashallah alaikum, you guys are all here today that are relevant to the industry you want to study. So maybe you're studying software development. Great, go to a coding camp, go to an event, hear from people. Just attend and listen and learn. And you never know what your connection, you might ask a question, you might meet somebody and you might learn something, or you might, grow your network in that way. It's really important. And whether you do that on LinkedIn, also on Clubhouse, like there's many different ways, or also even in your community groups. Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about digital, but also you can go in person. That's really great. And don't underestimate the value of growing your personal network. Whether you know people directly or whether you know people through colleagues, or even if you see that I'm connected to somebody on LinkedIn that I can connect you to, I'd be happy to do it. A lot of times we forget that there's people within our network who are willing to help, and people usually hire others based on recommendations. And so it's completely okay for you to kind of reach out, build a connection, and then use your personal network to see how you can grow that. There's a few things to do to also nurture your network online. I think that they're really important to mention. The first is, what's the content you're engaging with? What are you commenting on? Because people can see that. Are you leaving a really thought-provoking comment on an article? Fantastic. Keep doing that. What are you liking? What are you commenting? Algorithms on social media platforms, they see that and they boost it. So let's say you get in touch with a recruiter and you like a certain job offering. They're like, oh, maybe they're looking, What are you sharing that's timely? A lot of times I always say, check your sources. Are you sharing an article from some random website in 2008? Are you sharing a really interesting article that came out a few days ago from a credible source and adding your point of view? Because that's really what makes you stand out. Inviting and reaching out to people to make sure that you're always growing it. And of course, connecting. In the end of the day, I think you'll be surprised. A lot of people are super willing to ask, to give you some time. If you want to learn about the industry, if you want to learn about, a certain role, and it doesn't hurt to just try. The worst thing that they can do is say no, and it's no loss on anybody's part. You have networking events. These are specifically designed to help people kind of meet each other. So if you're attending one of them, you can always look who's going in advance and say, oh, I'm going to talk to these 3 people. You can try and ask, some really compelling questions. And honestly, my pro hack is Google good questions. I Google everything along the way. A lot of times the internet has the answers. So interesting questions to ask about a career in law. Great, Google it. And then go to the event and ask it. It's all good. Like there's nothing wrong with, you don't always have to, you can call on the internet. It has abundance of resources for you. And send a follow-up email. Remember that a lot, like if you go to an event and you like it, then, tell them that. Event organizers will be happy. They'll remember you. Maybe they'll invite you to the next one. Maybe they'll give you a chance to connect you with somebody in their LinkedIn network. It doesn't hurt to always make sure that when you have a conversation with somebody, you follow it up later so that you can keep it going, so that it's not just one time I randomly spoke to somebody for 40 minutes and I forget their name, but they were young and they wanted a job. Always nurture your network and make sure you're keeping up. Of course, you can always grow it by just reaching out. So tell people how you came across their profile. Maybe you read an article they wrote and you thought it was really interesting, or maybe you heard that they were a professor of one of your friends and that they really loved their course. Tell them why you're contacting them, whether you're looking to just grow your network, whether you're looking for employment, whether you're looking for advice on something. It always gives context. They know why you're reaching out and how they can be helpful. That's a really important piece, because then they understand what they can offer you. And if not them, they can recommend you. Somebody came to me and said, hey, Tala, I really want to learn about performance marketing. I would say, actually, this is really interesting. My colleague Marie is the best person to speak to about that. And Marie, if you had, she can go and take that conversation forward. So I've said a lot of things today, but if I can leave you with a few, the first is that if you want to be more like Mr. Potato Head, who has a great personal brand, remember that at first you need to be authentic. You need to be true to yourself. It always shows when you're trying to be somebody that you're not, and your core never changes. So embrace the parts of you that make you you and communicate them, and be ready to kind of put that forward because they are special and they are remarkable. The second is to be adaptable. As you see, Mr. Potato Head has many different things in the back of him. He can be sad, he can be happy, he can be in sport mode, he can be wearing a hat, he can be without it. But you should also be agile, because what happens is a lot of times you can have one resume, but you're applying to 3 different roles. And so you want to be able to adapt it to meet that role and make sure that you're being agile. And the last thing is you want to be persistent. He's determined. Actually, if you watch the Toy Story movies, Mr. Potato Head is dying for Mrs. Potato Head. He keeps praying. He's like, please, I really want a Mrs. Potato Head. He wants to grow his family. And you should be just as determined, because when it comes to growing your personal brand, you'll reap the benefits the more persistent you are and the more determined you are to grow it. And it's only through that consistency and ambition that it'll actually be successful. So that's kind of where I leave you today. I do have a few resources. I'll share them with you after this. There's a ton of articles you can find about building your brand and building the different arsenals. We actually found a brand workbook that was really interesting by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And we'll share that with you if you want to work through it. It's quite detailed, but it'll help you think of some questions and ask yourself and how you can shape your personal brand. And recently, LinkedIn added a skills assessment. So you can assess yourself and see what it is. And you can add the badges to your LinkedIn profile. And it can never hurt, to get certified according to LinkedIn is a really great thing. So we'll be sharing all of these with you. We also have a bunch of other resources from Cosmic Centaurs that are related to the world of work and the world of learning, not always just personal brand, but we'll share those with you so that you can take a look. But I would love to spend the next 10 minutes or so asking and answering, or however long, I have all night, asking and answering your questions. So the floor is yours, please. If there's anything that can help clarify, I'd love to.
Tala, as people are thinking of their questions, I really just want to thank you. And Tiki Al-Fafi, this was really, really amazing. And
oh, so glad.
It's just starting with the 98% number that popped up on us.
Yeah.
And how dangerous it is to not know that, and not know that everything you post, everything you put out there is being checked. So I hope this message came clear to all of us.
Yeah.
And tell us more about your opinion when it comes to CVs, really. Do you think infographics are really impactful? Do you think, but Dimitri has a question, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dimitri.
All good. I would love for Dimitri to ask his question, and then I'm really happy to come back to that point. It's a really good point as well.
Okay. Dimitri.
It's related. Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. So my question is related to the CV matter as well, because although I didn't send my CV, and I'm sorry about that, I have a bit of an infographic CV. Ooh. And I'm hearing a lot of opinions that recruiters would like more about like the more generic black and white CV, like where the information is clearly laid out without too much colors or too much like pictures, and that would make their job much easier for them, because there are many people applying for jobs, and and they are under hard conditions as recruiters. So what's your opinion on that? Because my LinkedIn as well as my CV needs some renovations lately, and I'm planning to do that. And your advice will be very much helpful.
Absolutely. It's a great question, Dimitri. I think, there are different perspectives, of course. In the end of the day, recruiters are people too, and they have different preferences. I would say do whatever makes you stand out, because 1,000,001 black and white CVs, sure, maybe the software that's scanning them can pick it up easier. But you won't forget it if you look at a CV that has colors. You won't forget it if you look at a CV that looks different. And more and more it's becoming commonplace. You know, your personal brand is you're more than just a list of your credentials. You know, when you look at that CV, you get a sense of, great, like if the colors are yellow and pink, and that tells me something about you. If the font is a certain way, if it's bold, if it's large, if it's, you know, if it's quantified, you know, if you have data points, an infographic CV, I know you know how to crunch numbers. That tells me something more. You don't have to write, I know I am good with numbers. It's clear. Well, it's there. And so what I would say is, you know, of course, look at the company you're applying to, and feel free to attach multiple documents. A lot of times when you're submitting documentation to either recruiters or to different people, you have an opportunity to submit anything else you'd like to add. So you can always submit your black and white CV either in addition to or as the main document, and add whatever you want to add. Add your references, add your infographic resume, add a link to a website you create for yourself. And as much as recruiters might say that they're inundated and they just want to see the black and white, it says something about you when you go the extra mile. And so that would be my advice to you, is don't be afraid to be bold and stand out with it. So I hope that answers your question.
I think the issue of CV is going to be, it's like you said, there are too many perspectives for this, and there's no one way. And you know, when we are going to go through our training, so Dimitri, wait for the workshop before you finalize yours. You will also, you'll probably get a lot of you know, opinions about it. But I think the one thing you, as a participants in this program, you need to remember that your CVs actually, I think the first step is they go through artificial intelligence, right?
They do, yeah.
Can you tell us about the process of how that happens? You know?
I think, look, softwares have crawlers. They crawl for the data. They look at the data that's on your CV that matches the job description, which is why I always say create a new CV for every job you have. I know it sounds tedious, but it's important, because different job descriptions have different keywords. So it could be the same job at two different companies, but the job description looks different, and you want to match that. You want to be able to say, if they say we need someone who works in cross-functional teams, write it. So you worked in cross-functional teams. Another job might be able to say able to collaborate with multiple departments. Say able to collaborate. Like, take the time to make those nuances, because these machines, that's what they look for. They look for the match. A lot of them, they have some sort of code systems, and I don't know what those are, because every company is different. But I would always say use the language of the job description and also of the company, and you know, match that. You know, so if companies, if they splash their values all over their website, and their values are about commitment and integrity, great, include commitment and integrity in your CV. It's going to higher the chances of you getting past that software that looks at you. And I would also always say, look for the person behind the job board as much as you can. Stalk them on LinkedIn. Look for HR at, I don't know, Microsoft, and look for them in your region and see what you can do, because it's always better if you know that person, and just add them to your network. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to reach out. The worst they can do is not accept your LinkedIn invitation. It's fine. At least you've gone the extra mile to try and connect with the person and say, you know, hey, I've applied online. Attaching a few versions of my CV for your reference. Would love to get your thoughts and see how, you know, if I might be a good fit for the role. You know, and don't be afraid to pitch yourself. I think we fear rejection, but you know, when it comes to landing a job, it's only part of the process, and also you'll learn from it. I found that, you know, if I go through an interview process and they say I'm not the right fit, always ask why. Always get a chance to ask why, especially if you make it to at least a round of consideration or interviews, because you'll learn something. They might tell you something. They might say, actually, your CV had typos and we need someone with meticulous attention to detail. Trust me, you'll never have typos in your CV after that again. So yeah, that's kind of a way to get around those crawlers, but also a hack to beat the system. So just include the terminology of the job description.
All right, so this is you're saying it as it is. So go ahead and check the website.
Yeah, for sure. You have nothing to lose.
How it is. This is how it is.
And it's also just, yeah.
And the other, I think, challenging thing that a lot of the participants have shared with me are two things. One is, what if they ask me at the end of the interview, do you have any questions? It's a very hard question to answer. هذا سئيل. وتاني واحد, which you one of you asked last session, if the job is asking for years of experience, وأنا ما عندي إلا maybe 1 or 2 years, should I apply or not? What's your take on these things?
Really good questions. Always apply. That's the short answer to that one. The second question, always apply. And your years of experience look different. And companies will say that, but also years of experience are relative because, you know, it just really depends on the job role. And a lot of times they're not going to say no experience welcome. You know, like it's just not going to say that. But yes, first of all, always apply, go for it. I mean, if they're asking for 10 years of experience and you have 2, I would say maybe the role's not right for you. But if it says 1 to 2 years of experience, it's fine. Honestly, like the job description for my first job ever had it. And like I had some internships and that was it. And it was fine. You get it. The second thing is, actually, I would say when you go to an interview, the most important thing is to come prepared with questions. In interviews at Cosmic Centaurs, for example, we ask you 3 questions and then we ask you to ask us questions for the rest of the time. It's important. It's important for multiple reasons. And then I'll also explain how you can get around it. 1, it shows curiosity. It shows that you're interested in learning more than what you have. So you go on the website, you learn about the company. You can ask them anything. You can ask them about job specifics. You can ask them about the culture. You can ask the person about their leadership style. You can ask the person, you can Google good interview questions and always go into an interview ready with 5 questions at the minimum. You want to keep the conversation going. The longer they have with you, the more you stand out. You know, let's say, you know, Khalid, you're interviewing for a marketing role. You can ask marketing specific questions. They'll be like, wow, I'm really impressed. Actually, you asked some very interesting strategic questions. If you're joining a company and you want to learn more about the flexible work policies, ask it at every interview. And it's challenging because now interviews is never just one. You have rounds. First you meet the team, then you meet the manager, then you meet the HR, then you meet the leader, then you go back to the HR. Like they're exhausting. But you should always be prepared to ask more questions than they ask you. And just know that that says the best thing about yourself, because that shows that you're curious. It shows that you've done your research, and it shows that you're truly interested because you really care and you want to learn more. So it's tough, but it's so worth it. And I'll be honest, Maya's here with us. I interviewed Maya. Maya halkatni. She asked me so many questions. I'm like, khalas, Maya, I don't have anything, you know, like, but I loved it. And that's how we knew she was a really good fit. Because at Cosmic Centaurs, one of our values is curiosity. And the fact that she could sit and ask me questions for 6 hours meant that she was the right fit for us. Because all we do is sitting, you know, it's a part of us. And it showed me that, you know, she knew what she was getting herself into. And she understood that. And she wanted to learn, and she had things where she was deciding if this was the right fit for her, because job interviews aren't just you're the right fit for a job. It's also like, is the job right for you? It's 2 ways. You also have the chance to decide if this organization is a place you want to work in. So grill them, ask them questions. I mean, ask them politely, but yeah, ask as many questions as you can. There's nothing better than when an interview goes longer because you're asking more questions than they are. And the person interviewing you is like, wow, this person's smart, you know? So yeah, that's what I would say to that. We have a few questions here. So Layan asks, regarding the infographic CV, do you think that managers won't read such a CV with a lot of numbers, graphs, words? For me, I prefer simple and colorful CVs. Layan, I would say that depends on the role. My brother is a data analyst. So his boss definitely loves to see the graphs. It's all he does all day. And so it works and it's relevant, you know? I think they'll appreciate the creativity. I don't think you should present an Excel spreadsheet of your skill set on an assessment framework. I think that's horrible. But, you know, there's nothing wrong with simplicity. If you want to add a few numbers, if you want to add a few colors, go for it. Do whatever feels right for you. And whatever you think is right for the role. If you were a graphic designer, I would say make your CV pristine and perfect because the person likely reviewing your CV is going to be looking at you with like a grid, you know, because they're going to be able to measure every word or line that's out of place. So I would say that you can always have multiple versions. So yeah, that's one question. We had one from Istida. If I had an interview and I searched for the interviewer on LinkedIn and I haven't sent an invitation to request, do you think that will affect the process? No, I think it's fine if you meet with them before or after. I think if you were interviewing at Cosmic and I saw that you reviewed my profile on LinkedIn, I would just say they're doing their research, and that's a good thing. And if after we have a good connection, great, I'd love to connect with you, even if the role isn't the right fit, or even if you decide to take another job. A lot of people on the other side are happy to grow their network, and it's completely okay. So send the invitation whenever you feel ready. I personally send them after, just because I also want to get a chance to really connect with them on a personal level, especially if I know I'm going to meet with them. If I'm trying to reach out to somebody, I'll add them randomly. But if I have an interview scheduled with Marilyn, I'll reach out to her afterwards, because I know I'm going to meet her, and then we can actually make a connection. So I hope that answers your question. It does not affect the process. You can do it whenever it feels right. One more question. If I am asked, what is your salary expectation? We could go into a whole nother world about negotiation. Anjad, it's like one of those things where, again, completely different perspectives. If you're a lawyer, I would say you better negotiate, because that's also a reflection of your skill set. It is a trap question, Dimitri, I agree. I actually, it's tricky to say, because in different parts of the world, there are different laws. In the United States, for example, and in other countries, employers cannot ask you questions like, they can ask you what's your expectation, but in this part of the world, they can actually ask you to show proof of previous salary. And that's something you should be aware of. And I would always suggest that no matter where you want to work, you should read up on the laws and just familiarize yourself a little bit with them, because it'll just help you negotiate better. If you're an expecting mom, you should kind of read about the maternity leave, because you might want to negotiate that. If you're asked your salary expectation, I have always pushed them to give me a number first. I have always said that, I trust that based on my performance throughout the interview process, I would ask that you guys put a number on the table that you think reflects the value I can create for your company. And sometimes that didn't get me anywhere. They were like, sorry, but you have to tell us. And I'm like, okay, $1 million a month, whatever. But it's a difficult question, and you need to do what feels right for you and your values. And also, different people have different approaches, but my approach is to always say that, to push them to put a number on the table first. Some of us aren't active on social platforms. Do you think it's mandatory to be active in order to increase our chances of finding opportunities? In today's world, it's very fast-paced. And whether you are the IT systems engineer, or the marketer, or the chief of staff, or the admin assistant, it's important to have your finger on the pulse. It's fine if you're not active on social media. But at the same time, if you put yourself out there while you're in the recruitment process, it's really helpful, because you're building a name for yourself. And maybe right now, you don't really want to be active on social media and put your face on there or whatever, and that's completely okay. But it doesn't hurt to share an article, and it doesn't hurt to leave an interesting comment. And you could be referencing things related to your work. And if you're in the job hunt, I would say that it'll help you stand out. And I would encourage you to kind of take a step out of your comfort zone and just get a little bit active. Use the tools that we shared and kind of see what works for you. It can only help. We have another question. Do you think that paid internships are better than unpaid ones in terms of being accepted for a full-time job after finishing the internship? No, I think that it's unfortunate when companies can't offer paid internships. I think that it's our ethos. We always pay. It's not always a lot, but it's something. And because we believe that the value people create is important to recognize, whether it's paid or unpaid, a lot of times the future employer will never know unless you tell them. So it's completely okay. If you are in an unpaid internship, I would fight to get a paid internship. I would say that, because I think that will also, it doesn't have to be a lot, but it's something. Even if, like, for example, like I remember as an intern once, I was just covered my transportation costs. This was before remote work, but it was just something. And I think that, like, if I can encourage you, I would say go and get it. Lara, I graduated with biomedical engineering degree, but I got experience in automotive engineering. This experience weakens my CV when applying again biomedical jobs. Can I just tell you something? A lot of the times, and I think there's a case study from NASA, and this is really interesting, because when the aerospace engineers had a huge problem, obviously they asked for more aerospace engineers to come and solve it. But in fact, somebody down the supply chain that didn't have really to do with aerospace and just provided one of the parts was the person who solved that problem. And that's to say that I believe in range. I don't believe in always hyper specializing. I think that it's really important to have a broad sense of knowledge, and it's something that we value. I'm not a specialist, but I also will never be. I think it's important in your trade to have that, but don't underestimate what you can bring to the table from your automotive engineering skills. I wish I could kind of pick on the specifics, but I can't. But also, our skill sets are transferable beyond our knowledge. So it's experience. Maybe at this automotive engineering opportunity, you learned about how to be an amazing leader, or teamwork, or you learned about, conflict resolution. Great. That's so important, because your next job, no matter what it's in, those are skills you can take to the table. So I would reflect on what you learned beyond the actual specifics of the work and say, what am I going to take with me? Is it a dynamic, fast-paced environment? Great, put that. Did you learn how to collaborate with people from other cultures? Great, cross-functional, like cross-cultural experience is super important in today's world. Whatever it is, think about what you can take and carry it with you, and use that to your strength, to say that, like, you experience something completely different and you can bring that perspective to the table, and so no, I don't think it's a hindrance. We love range, and there's a really good book called Range, and I recommend that you guys read it. I think it's really interesting. I'll share one anecdote from that. Roger Federer and Tiger Woods, two of the world's best athletes. Tiger Woods is a golfer and was born and raised to be the best golfer in the world. From the age of 2, he was swinging his bat. Roger Federer is one of the world's best tennis players, and until he was, I think, 19, he was playing football, tennis, swimming. He never specialized. He had range, right? But that's what made him really good, because the way in which his muscles developed, it made him stronger, it made him faster, it made him better. And Tiger Woods was specialized, and he still did really well. And he had an amazing career. But that just goes to show that, there's two scenarios for everything, and there's nothing wrong with having range. And I won't, spill the secrets of the book, but I think it's a really good one. And if you want to read it, it'll help you think about, the beauty of changing career paths. We love it at Cosmic Centaurs. We have somebody who works on our team. He used to do customer service at British Airways, and now he's a consultant helping teams with organizational design. There's no overlap, but he's great, and so that's really interesting. Yeah, agreed, Maya. Marilyn, the founder of our company, studied architecture, but she never built, she only built companies. She never built buildings. So yeah. Dimitri, I'm doing an unpaid internship, only covers transport. I'm thankful. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I mean, alhamdulillah, like I feel as though, internships, unpaid, paid, their experience, and you can learn from that. And, careers, I always say, they're the long game. You think of the decision in the long term. I'm not yet 30, but my career will last me until I'm like, my mom's still working, she's 55, inshallah alayha. So 25 years. So don't stress too much about the right now. Think of it as the long-term game and what you want to gain and the steps that you want to get there. And your personal brand has that amount of time to grow, and it'll change. And that's okay, because you'll change, and that's really helpful too. You want to grow.
Tala, I'm sorry, I'm sorry for all these questions.
No, not at all.
Sorry for keeping you longer than maybe you expected.
No. I have time. I'm so energized by this conversation, and I'm really happy to answer more questions. If you guys have to go, of course, I respect all of your time. I would, I just have one ask. If anybody's comfortable, if you want to leave, that's fine. But for anybody who doesn't mind, I would love to take a screenshot of all of us here. That's just my one question. But if you're uncomfortable, I totally respect that, and you can leave the chat, and we can take the photo another day. That's totally fine. And just a note, I will share all of the presentation and the resources with you after this. I'll share it with you, Nicole, and maybe you can circulate it to everybody. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and your attention and your engagement. I'm energized by you all, and I'm very grateful to share this learning experience with you. So thank you so much.
Oh my God, Tala, we are the ones to thank you. Really, it's been so inspiring. Your smile, your energy, the words, the discussion. And I want to tell you, see, I told you it's an amazing group. So I'm very proud of this group and all of the fantastic questions and the participation. Really, really, you've been fantastic.
Yeah.
So Tala, yes, go ahead and share with me whatever you want, and I'll organize sharing it with everyone. everyone يعني بتجننوا عن جد. Great questions. We're not going to leave you. Don't worry. We're حنضلنا مسكينة, and we might invite Tala back for another session. There's a nice talk
I'd
about
love that. I'd be honored.
We'll talk about it after Christmas, after New Year's.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's see about the pictures.
Yeah, if anybody would like to, feel free. You can keep your camera off. You can turn it on if you're comfortable. I would just love to have something that we can share. Oh, so nice to see you. Hi, Dimitri. Hi, Rama. Lovely. Thank you.
Hello.
No pressure. Hi. Thanks for your questions and your engagement. I will take a screenshot and I will see. I think I can only get half the page at a time, so I'll do the first page first.
Let's see. How do you do that?
There you go.
I'm trying to see everybody. How do I see everybody? Standard?
What I'll do actually is I'll stop sharing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's my poll. Tayyib. Yeah, we still don't all fit on one page, mashallah. It's great. So what I will do is we'll take a screenshot page by page and I will merge them together. So 3.
Is this for your social media or this is for your what?
This is for, I mean, we would love to share it on social media if you guys are open to that, but we will also, I want to share it with the team and just let them know that we had an amazing session today.
فبتكون عم نظبط شعراتنا فجأة.
ابدا. وانا كمان صراحه كنت عم بطلع على حالي انك عن جد انا اجيت هيك على الويبينار.
It's okay. It's the internal energy that's fantastic. All right.
3, 2, 1. Cheese. Amazing. Fantastic. And then I'll take the second page. Wow, so many people are here today. 3, 2, 1. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Anja, and really, I'm so grateful for this. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of the night. And yeah, maybe see you guys soon, inshallah. Feel free to connect with me across all social media platforms. I'd be really happy to help. And if you have questions, you can always reach out. It's not just this webinar. I can answer them for years to come. So yeah.
Fantastic. Hi, Rama. All right. So I thank you everyone for coming.